The biggest struggle in the filming process was that we didn't have enough time, I mean, by necessity, because it's a small film set in, one room, just two actors. And, the I just was very, conscious and conscientious about trying to keep things on time and not have to go back and ask for extra time to film. So I was just very concerned that, everything that I wanted, everything that was written on the page, I would be able to get, so that I would have enough to reconstruct the film in the editing process. And so that was a concern that I had, that I should do a good job, and I should get this in, get everything that I wanted, be able to meet the shooting schedule every day. So that was of concern to me, but it ended up working out, and so that concern was put to bed when we wrapped. Amnesty International, here's the thing. I think that I was opposed to the insertion of the quote at the end of the film by Amnesty International. I was opposed to it when there were plans to put that quote on the film, and I remain opposed to it to this day. Those people who got the movie, like for instance, Kathleen Murphy at Film Comment, she got the film, she truly appreciated it. To her, it was an irritant. Like, what the hell is this quote doing after a film that goes into such depth on, you know, the psychopathology of abuse and all of that? What is this thing doing here, right? And for people who didn't get the film, it became a convenient sort of a peg to hang their hate of the film on. Like a peg you hang a coat on. Now I know I don't like that movie because it is Amnesty International propaganda. And no content creator, no storyteller wants to create propaganda. Nobody does. And for a film which had such a broad scope that Closetland had, what it had in terms of limitations, one said to people, it exceeded that in terms of the scope of its view, of its concerns. And to have all of that collapse into just propaganda, it felt like the entire content of the film was being shoehorned into, oh, this is just a film about political abuse. No, it isn't. It's a film about much, much, much more. But to people who do not have the patience or who don't get it, that becomes a convenient thing. Oh, it is Amnesty International propaganda. And I later on found out that the VHS video release of the film, there was Amnesty ads before, after. It's just so, it is not at all the spirit of what I created, and I remain deeply opposed to it, and it should not have happened. The film is not understood differently because even back then there were people who were incredibly perceptive and wise in how they approached the movie and what they got out of it. I think what has changed is because of social media, one of the good things that has happened is it has completely democratized and made even the playing field. So people no longer have to go and look at what a critic said to form their opinion of a film. They have influencers who can tell them what to think, and oftentimes what they do is they go see something and think for themselves. Word of mouth of average people has been empowered a lot by social media. And I think that climate, the viewership climate, has changed for the better because of the advent of social media. And because there aren't anymore just a few sort of anointed high priests and priestesses who will tell us all what to think and what to approve of. No, that whole game has changed. And I think that's a good thing for all artists, especially artists who want to try and do something daring and something that's not formulaic and something that is different. If I were to write Closetland today, would it be the same story? Yes, of course it would, because my view has not changed on the issues that I depicted in the film. My views on the psychopathology of intimate personal abuse and the psychopathology of large scale government sponsored tyranny. My view is that the psychopathology of both is identical, chillingly identical. The psychopathology of the victims in both instances and the psychopathology of the oppressor in both instances. Chillingly similar. The parallels, the symmetry between the two, to me has always been, one is just a smaller version of the other. So since my views on that issue have not changed, the script I would write would essentially be the same script. I'm trying to draw a link between the psychopathology of an abused populace, which is what happens when there is state sponsored tyranny, and the psychopathology of a victim of child abuse. I see frightening, chilling parallels between the psychopathology of the victim in both cases and the psychopathology of the oppressor abuser in both cases. So my thinking has not changed. I still see the same parallels. I still see sort of a chilling, frightening kind of symmetry. So my thinking on that has not changed. What has changed would be a hope, maybe, that more such work can come out of people from diverse populations, that we will not be expected to do the what is expected of us. Like, in my case, it would be slum movies, third world poverty porn movies. I hope that has changed, because then you empower voices from all different diverse populations to actually be free and tell you the stories that they want to tell you, regardless of race, gender, culture, creed, all of that. No, actually, I'm one of those people who's quite happy to create a film or a story or a whatever and just walk away from it. Let the conversation go where it will. Sometimes I do not at all agree in the direction with the direction that people are taking the conversation, but that is part of free speech and free expression, isn't it? It's my free expression to create this, and it's the free expression of people receiving it to receive it and to pass it and to interpret it to themselves, take away from it what they will. So it's fine. It's all fine, all good. Very prosaically, to disappoint everybody, I was just a new graduate out of film school. My husband was a new graduate out of law school, and he had a job at one of the big law firms in Los Angeles. And neither of us had, two pennies to rub with each other. But what he had was a lot of credit card companies coming and offering him, wanting him to sign up with their credit card. So he said, "What if, what if we took a loan on the credit cards and you can create a film? How about you write something with one room, set just in one room with just two people, and I can fund that. And that way you don't have to run around with your script and begging this one to read it and that one to give you an opportunity. I'll give you the opportunity. Here, take the money, go make a film, but don't be too Cecil D. DeMille here, because we don't have that much money. Just set something in one room with just two people." And that really was the origins of the at least the structure of the idea, the parameters of the idea. One room, two actors. But the theme itself, the parallels I'm drawing between intimate, personal, heinous form of abuse, which is the abuse of a child by an adult, right? And on the other end, you have the abuse of a populace by a tyrannical state. The parallel that I drew, that has been something that I'd been mulling over, it looks like, for quite a while. Power dynamics always interests me, Ever since my earliest years, I've always felt a very strong sense of self. And I also felt that that self had to be protected against whomever, against familial structures, or against the tyranny of the school system that I was sent to, which was a very abusive school system. That myself had to be protected, like one would guard a flame from a candle by putting protective hands over it. I had to guard myself. I had to protect myself. And having such a strong sense of self, I also felt a sense of identification with people whose individuality is threatened in any way, be it because they are different in terms of sexual orientation, or be it because they are different in terms of religion or race or whatever. That is something that I feel protective towards, and I'm deeply interested in the psychology of those who want to hound those people and try and break their spirit, break their back, so to speak. So these things I had been mulling over for a long time. So when my husband David said, "One room, two people, that's all I can afford," then the idea of an interrogation chamber suggested itself to me. Let's make this an interrogation setup with one person interrogating the other person, ostensibly, on the grounds of political, that you've been a political you've been a political reactionary, a rebel, but really there's a deeper agenda going on. So that really was the genesis of the piece. I didn't. I don't usually tend to write roles for actors. When I write a story for myself, which Closetland was, no one paid me to write it. I wrote it on my own, sitting, in my one bedroom apartment, right? So when I create a story, the only thing that I'm loyal to is the story. The dynamics of the story is the only thing that I want to preserve and that I'm loyal to. I don't write for anyone or anything other than what the story demands. Once the project got set up with Ron Howard's company, Imagine Entertainment, given that that's such a pedigreed company, it's a big company and a fine company, we started to get interest from all sorts of actors wanting to, be in the project. And, I went with Alan Rickman and Madeleine Stowe. Him I chose because of his theater pedigree. I hadn't seen much of their work prior to Closetland, because neither of them had been in many films then. I mean, Alan Rickman had been in Die Hard, and Madeleine Stowe had been in something else, but I hadn't seen much of their, maybe Revenge. I hadn't seen much of their film work, and I certainly hadn't seen Rickman's stage work. But I felt that with his stage pedigree, he could handle, stage actors in England are wonderful because their dialogue and stuff they are easily able to handle. And, they're used to it with all their years of doing Shakespeare and Shaw and all of that on stage. The dialogue is a piece of cake for them. So, that would be an added plus, I thought. I think what one does is one gives the actors the script and hopes that people understand that that's what they're dealing with. That this is going to be a film that is going to deal with some tough emotional subjects. Number one. In the case of Madeleine Stowe, particularly, I know reassurances were forthcoming for her as an actress, and I was very happy to give them that there would be no nudity and that she would not be photographed in a titillating or a cheap or a crass or a crude manner, because that was quite the reverse of what this film, was really trying to do. So, and that my intentions were crystal clear in the script. I think I might have even written in the script that there is no, nudity. I certainly make that a point in all my scripts. If there's someone is in a shower or something, I make it crystal clear in the script that you will not be asked to strip. I don't do nudity on screen and stuff. So in her case, I think there was that added reassurance given. But here I'd like to inject a small dose of perspective into things, like we're all storytellers, artists, people who write stories and direct stories, and people who act in them, and people who work behind the camera, the crew. All of us are lucky to be essentially like overgrown children in a playpen. And what I wrote about in Closetland, people are really going through it in very many parts of the world. Be it child abuse, be it sexual abuse, be it being tyrannized by the state because you're that citizen who speaks up. This is really happening to many people around the world. And I think people in the arts need to have a real sense of perspective that those are the real heroes. We're just writing about it and acting in it and directing it and setting music to it. But the real heroes are the people who actually go through these things and come out and not only survive, but they actually thrive. Those are the heroes. So let's not lose perspective on what we're actually doing. Not during the filming, because filming itself can be chaotic, right? I mean, as much as you plan it, it's still a lot of people. And the minute you involve a lot of human beings, there's a little element of uncertainty and chaos. In my experience, it's just my limited experience, but just my experience. When I've always felt, yeah, this is what I wrote and it's coming together is in post. When I'm looking at what was shot and I'm shaping it in the editing room, and then I'm setting sound design to it, which was very crucial in Closetland because I had to create the sense of another world that existed outside the room. And that was only using, sound design, sound effects. So when you're creating sound and when you're working with the music composer to set music, that's when you start to see your script come alive. And that's always a good feeling. Oh, this is what I envisioned, and now it's coming together exactly as I envisioned it. When you write, you're in the grip of the muse and you do what she says, right? So when you write, you're writing on instinct. And if you keep a sharp ear, you know when you're off course and when you need to come back on course. But after you write and then you look at your own work, then you see, this is why I did that. That's why did this. Now, in Closetland, two things struck me about the stories created by the woman. One is all her friends are animals. Very early on, this woman learned to distrust human beings because of what had happened to her, the violation that happened to her when she was a child. So she looks to the friendly rooster. The cat comes and saves her, sprouting a pair of green wings. And there's a cow who learned to fly. So there are two things. Animals are friends, and the threat that she perceives comes from the human world. And number two, it's always about flight. It's about a rooster and a bird that can fly, sounding the warning alarm. When she is in extremis, in dire straits, and she's screaming for help, what comes to her is the cat with green wings. A cat that can fly comes and saves her. So the element of flight, of having within oneself the ability to transcend one situation, which is sort of symbolically speaking, a flight of sorts. I mean, I think that was inherent in what I was writing. Although when I was writing, I wasn't particularly aware of it. It just was looking good on the page, and I was in the grip of that. The difference between the stage adaptation and the film, it's really the same play, and nothing has been changed. I didn't change the film script in one word, any way, shape, or form in doing the stage adaptation. The difference is a difference of experience for the viewer. In film, the viewer can actually penetrate the deepest levels of his or her own psyche in terms of nightmare landscape, dream landscape, the half world that exists between waking and sleep, the world of paranoia and phobia, and the world of strength, the strength that comes from within when you have nothing else you can count on. Whereas on stage, the experience is being transported, but by the power of words. On stage, it's really the playwright is the king there. So it's the power of the words that lifts you, that elevates you. The final speech at the end when she recognizes his identity, you get, people told me they got goosebumps then, people who saw it on stage. But that is because they're transported by the power of the word. So that would be the difference. The difference is what the viewer experiences. It is not a difference in terms of what I, as a creator, would experience. To me, the film has a definite closure. The woman, at the end, all illusions have been ripped from her. She knows the truth about him. She knows it is the same person. She has come face to face with the beast that has sort of been lying submerged for most of her life. She has looked the beast in the eye and she has lived to tell the tale. What happens after her moment of triumph? And I already give you a hint there. She's either going to become like the physicist who's left like a brain dead vegetable, or she's going to be marched off to her death. Either way, she's fully prepared for it. That is closure. Closure is not the two of them deciding, oh, let's all forget that. We'll go off into the sunset and get married. No, closure is when a life attains its pinnacle, when a life comes to its ultimate moment and it actualizes itself. That has happened to both of them, actually. He is broken by his inability to defeat her. She is triumphant, regardless of what happens to her afterwards. It's not going to be good, but regardless of what happens to her afterwards, she is triumphant because she has triumphed over pain, psychological and physical. She has triumphed over him. She has emerged the victor. So that is closure. I mean, I couldn't be clearer. I always rehearse the entire text. To me, my way of working, there's no other way in which the actors can come to feel like they own the dialogue, where the dialogue seems to come spontaneously, as if spontaneously from them, and not look rehearsed and smack of, oh, someone else wrote this, and these guys just memorized it and they are, pulling the words out. Rehearsal is the only way, I think, where you can get the actors to own the lines and to own the text. So yeah, I do rehearse the whole thing, and I do that for all my films. Everybody has to memorize the text before coming into rehearsals, and then in rehearsal we will find what the words actually mean, why they say what they said, you know? Why did I write these words instead of something else? That's all those discoveries you make during the rehearsal process. No, I was absolutely not worried at all because I had no idea that it would cause such a firestorm in certain circles. And now knowing that it did cause that firestorm, I still would write the exact same script that I wrote. I wouldn't take one word back. And in general, I think I tend to place a lot of trust and hope in the average audience. I'm not talking about elite circles, you know, the gatekeepers and the anointers and all of that. I'm talking about average people. I have a lot of faith and I have a lot of trust in them. I think they are hardy. I think they can be told a few hard truths. They may not all like it. Not certainly, Closetland is not a film that is meant for everybody. It was made on a tiny budget, so it is clearly not meant for everybody. It's not a mainstream, you know, sort of action adventure that everybody and his brother can go in and like. It's not meant to be that. But it certainly has its audience. And I do believe over the course of the years, having seen how the different people from different demographics have come to the film, that it's always a huge mistake to underestimate the audience, either their psychological and spiritual hardiness or their intellectual abilities. They're smart and they are hardy, and they can accept a few tough realities without flinching. And that's the wonderful thing about when you can directly deal with your audience. Yeah, I hadn't seen any of Alan Rickman's work, prior, and I saw Die Hard, of course, because that was the other movie he'd done. But the thing about Closetland is that it was probably the first film where he was the lead, because for a full 90 minutes, it's either him or Madeleine Stowe, and they're oftentimes sharing the screen. So it's a wonderful sort of you know way to look at his work and to look at him, sort of carrying the film, so to speak.